Know your place, bitch. Staff Sergeant Derek Rawlins didn't whisper it. He spat the words across Camp Pendleton's enlisted mess hall like venom meant to burn on contact. His hand, thick-knuckled, calloused from iron and ego, slammed into the 54-year-old woman's shoulder, hard enough to send her stumbling forward into the table's edge. Her tray crashed. Coffee splattered across government-issue linoleum. Scrambled eggs scattered like shrapnel. The room went dead silent. 112 people watched a middle-aged Navy petty officer pick herself up with hands that didn't shake. What they saw, a desk jockey who'd wandered where she didn't belong. What they missed, the way her pupils dilated and contracted in a single breath. The way she cataloged every exit without moving her head. The way she calculated angles to 7 improvised weapons within arm's reach. If you're new here, subscribe to the channel and follow this story to the end. Drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The mess hall had been loud before. Forks scraping against plastic trays. Conversations overlapping in that peculiar military white noise that sounds the same whether you're at Pendleton or Lejeune or some forward operating base where the food tastes like cardboard and regret. Boots shuffling on floors that never looked clean no matter how much bleach got poured on them. Now it was silent. Not gradually. All at once. Like someone had thrown a switch. Marine Cole stood slowly. She was 54 years old with silver-streaked hair pulled back in a regulation bun that had gone slightly loose during the impact. Her Navy working uniform, the blue-gray digital pattern that marked her as something other than Marine, had coffee soaking into the left shoulder. Her hands moved automatically, brushing egg from her sleeve, straightening her collar. Her hands didn't shake. Her breathing didn't change. Staff Sergeant Derek Rawlins stood there, chest-inflated fists clenched at his sides. He was 32, built like someone who spent more time in the gym than anywhere else. High and tight haircut, freshly faded. Jaw set in that particular way young men have when they're trying to look dangerous but haven't earned the right. He was waiting for something. Tears, maybe. Fear. Some reaction that would validate what he'd just done. Some proof that he was the predator and she was prey. Marine looked at him for exactly 3 seconds. Not long enough to seem like a challenge. Not short enough to seem like fear. Just evaluation. Clinical. The way you'd assess weather conditions or terrain features or whether a door was worth breaching. Then she turned and walked out. Boots measured on tile. Shoulders square. Back straight. The kind of control that suggested violence wasn't something foreign to her, just something she was actively choosing not to employ. The mess hall stayed quiet for another 5 seconds. Then the noise returned, but muted, subdued, wrong. Rawlins watched her go with something flickering behind his eyes. Not satisfaction, something closer to confusion. He'd expected her to break, expected her to cry or scream or run, expected to feel powerful. Instead, he felt like he'd just poked something sleeping, something that had chosen not to wake up. "That's how you handle squids who forget their place," he said to no one in particular. His voice was too loud, compensating. Navy support personnel need to learn some respect. A few Marines laughed. Nervous laughter. The kind that happens when people aren't sure what they just witnessed but know they should react somehow. Lance Corporal Marcus Chen didn't laugh. He was 23, smart enough to keep his mouth shut, and he'd been watching Chief Petty Officer Cole since she'd arrived at Pendleton 6 weeks ago. Something about the way she moved bothered him. Not in a bad way. In an uncomfortable way. Like watching a house cat and slowly realizing it might be a mountain lion that had learned to purr. "You see the way she walked out," Chen said quietly to the Marine next to him. "Yeah. Didn't even react. Cold." "No." Chen shook his head. "Not cold. Controlled. That's different." "Different how?" Chen didn't answer. He wasn't sure he could explain it. But he'd seen his grandfather move like that. His grandfather who'd done 2 tours in Vietnam and never talked about what happened there. Who could sit perfectly still for hours. Who assessed every room he entered like he was mapping escape routes. Marine Cole moved like that. Like violence was a language she spoke fluently but had chosen not to use. Marine made it to the women's head before her hands started trembling. She gripped the edge of the sink and stared at her reflection in the scratched mirror. 54 years old. Crow's feet around eyes that had seen things no official record would ever acknowledge. Silver, threading through brown hair that used to be darker. A face that looked like someone's mother, someone's aunt, someone who should be worrying about grandchildren and retirement plans. Not someone who could kill a man 18 different ways with her bare hands. Not someone who had. Her reflection stared back with eyes that were calm. Too calm. The disconnect between what she felt inside and what her face showed was something she'd learned to maintain decades ago. Operational necessity. You didn't survive in denied areas by letting your emotions show on your face. But here alone she could feel the adrenaline surge that had flooded her system the moment Rollins touched her. Could feel the combat programming that had snapped online cataloging threats and weapons and exit strategies before her conscious mind had even registered the assault. She'd identified 7 improvised weapons within arm's reach in less than 2 seconds. Fork tines up penetration weapon for soft tissue targets. Tray edge aluminum composite sharp, if swung correctly at throat or temple. Coffee mug blunt force ceramic fragments as secondary. Chair leg, if separated from base 22 inches of leverage. The serving knife behind the steam line 6 inches serrated. The fire extinguisher on the wall, 13 pounds of concentrated impact. Rollins himself, his own body weight could be used against him. She'd mapped angles of attack, calculated force requirements, assessed which witnesses would need to be addressed if the situation escalated beyond recovery. All of this in the time it took her heart to beat twice. That was what 25 years of operating in the shadows did to a person. It rewrote your nervous system, turned threat assessment into reflex, made violence as natural as breathing, and just as hard to stop. You didn't do it, she whispered to her reflection. You controlled it. But the trembling in her hands said what her voice wouldn't. It had been close. Closer than it should have been. The old Marine, the operator, the ghost. The woman who'd spent 2 decades in places that didn't officially exist, that Marine would have put Rollins on the ground before his hand finished its arc toward her shoulder. Would have controlled the space, controlled the threat, controlled the outcome. Would have made an example that ensured no one ever touched her again. But that Marine had made a promise. In a compound in Helmand province surrounded by Taliban fighters who should have overrun their position in the first 12 hours, she'd made a promise to herself and to the man lying next to her with shrapnel in his chest. If I survive this, I'll try to live as something other than a weapon. Warren Drake had heard her say it, had nodded through the pain, had told her that was the right line to hold. 8 months later, Drake was dead, IED on a routine convoy in Ramadi. The kind of death that seemed insignificant compared to 72 hours of siege warfare. Just another name on a wall. Just another flag-draped coffin. Marine had kept the promise anyway. For 4 years she'd kept it. Transferred out of the JSOC intelligence detachment. Took a desk job that required none of her skills. Buried the operator so deep she sometimes forgot that woman existed. Until a 32-year-old staff sergeant with more ego than sense decided she needed to be put in her place. The door to the head opened. Marine's hands stopped trembling instantly. Her face smoothed into neutral calm. The transition was seamless. Automatic. A young female Marine walked in. Saw Marine at the sink, hesitated. "Chief, you okay?" "Fine." Marine's voice was steady. "Just cleaning up." The Marine Lance Corporal, maybe 20 years old, glanced at the coffee stain on Marine's uniform. Her expression suggested she'd heard what happened in the mess hall. News traveled fast on military bases. Bad news traveled faster. Staff Sergeant Rollins is... She trailed off, uncertain how to finish. "Is what?" "An asshole, Chief. Everyone knows it. He's been riding everyone hard since his brother..." She stopped, looked away. "Sorry. I shouldn't have said anything." Marine turned off the water, dried her hands with paper towels that felt like sandpaper. His brother, Gunnery Sergeant Tyler Rollins, Marine Raider. He was killed in Syria 8 months ago. IED hit his convoy during an extraction op. Something cold settled in Marine's chest. Not sympathy exactly. Recognition. She knew what it was like to lose someone to the kind of death that shouldn't kill warriors. The meaningless deaths. The random ones. The ones that proved combat didn't care about skill or preparation or how many enemies you'd defeated. It just took who it took. Derek took it hard, the Lance Corporal continued. Tyler was everything Derek wanted to be. Raider, Tier 1, the whole deal. After he died, Derek just got mean. Like he's trying to prove something. Like if he can't be his brother, he's going to make everyone else feel as bad as he does. Marine absorbed this information, filed it away. Understanding an enemy's motivation didn't change what they were, but it helped predict what they'd do next. Thank you for telling me, she said. Chief, are you going to report him? What he did, that was assault. You could... No. The word was flat. Final. The young Marine blinked at the tone. But, I don't need regulations to fight my battles, Lance Corporal, and I don't need to be rescued. She walked out before the Marine could respond. The base gym smelled like rubber mats and old sweat, and the peculiar desperation of men trying to prove things to themselves. Marine came every morning at 0500 before most of the base was awake. Creature of habit. Also, operational practice establish routines become invisible, don't draw attention. The morning after the mess hall incident, she walked in expecting empty spaces and silence. Derek Rollins was waiting by the pull-up bar. He wasn't alone. 2 other Marines flanked him. Lance Corporal Garrett Webb, young, eager, not smart enough to know he was following the wrong leader. And Corporal James Btch Morrison, bigger, meaner, the kind of man who peaked in high school and had been declining ever since. 3 of them, positioned to block her path to the exit. Marine didn't slow down, didn't alter her trajectory, just walked toward the pull-up bar like they weren't there. You didn't run crying to the CO, Rollins said. His voice carried across the empty gym. I'm surprised. Thought squids were all about following the rules, filing reports, hiding behind regulations. Marine set her water bottle on the bench, started her stretching routine, didn't acknowledge he'd spoken. Hey, Rollins stepped closer. I'm talking to you, Chief. I heard you. Her voice was mild, almost bored. I'm just not interested in what you have to say. Btch made a sound that might have been a laugh. Rollins' face flushed red. You think you're better than us, some 50-year-old desk jockey who pushes papers and pretends she belongs on a combat base? Marine finished her stretch, stood, looked at Rollins for the first time since entering the gym. I think you're a grieving man who doesn't know how to process his brother's death. I think you've decided anger is easier than sadness. I think you pick on people you perceive as weak because it makes you feel strong, and feeling strong is the only thing keeping you from falling apart. The gym went very quiet. Rollins' face cycled through several expressions. Shock, rage, something that might have been recognition. Then his walls went back up harder than before. You don't know anything about my brother. I know he was a Marine Raider. I know he died in Syria 8 months ago. I know IEDs don't care about how good you are or how many deployments you've survived. They just kill whoever's in the wrong place at the wrong time. She paused. Let the words settle. And I know that attacking middle-aged women in mess halls won't bring him back. Rollins moved fast, faster than she'd expected. His hand came up, reaching for her collar, intending to grab and shake or shove, or Marine wasn't there. She'd shifted sideways, a movement so economical, it barely looked like movement at all. His hand grabbed empty air. His momentum carried him forward. For one frozen moment, he was off balance, overextended, completely vulnerable. She could have ended it there. A palm strike to the floating ribs. A knee to the common peroneal nerve. A simple hip throw that would put him on the mat with her controlling his airway. Instead, she stepped back. Created distance. Let him recover. Btch and Webb hadn't moved. They were staring at her like they'd seen something impossible, like gravity had momentarily stopped working and then started again before they could process what happened. Rollins straightened. His face was pale now, the flush of anger replaced by something colder. Confusion, uncertainty, the dawning realization that the prey might not be prey, after all. How did you? I'm going to do my workout now, Marine said. Her voice was still mild, still bored. You can stay and watch, or you can leave. I don't particularly care which. She turned her back on him, walked to the pull-up bar, jumped up and gripped the bar with hands that showed scars. If you looked closely, scars in places that suggested intimacy with weapons and rough rope, with hard use and harder training. 20 pull-ups, dead hang, no kipping, no momentum. Smooth and controlled with perfect form. She dropped down, walked to the bench press, loaded plates, started her sets. Rollins stood there for another minute. His boys looked at him, waiting for direction, waiting to be told what to do. He didn't give them anything, just turned and walked out without a word. Btch followed. Webb hesitated, glanced back at Marine, then hurried after the others. Marine finished her workout. Same routine she'd followed for 30 years. Same discipline. Same control. But inside, the operator was waking up. So, 3 days later, the harassment escalated. Someone slashed the tires on her personal vehicle. Someone left a dead rat in her wall locker. Someone spread rumors that she was sleeping with a married officer, completely fabricated, designed to destroy her reputation without any evidence to trace. Marine documented each incident, photographed the damage, noted times and potential witnesses, but she didn't report anything, didn't file complaints, didn't ask for help. She was gathering intelligence, mapping the enemy's patterns, understanding their capabilities and limitations, old habits. On day 4, she found Rollins waiting outside her berthing area at 04:30. Too early for witnesses, too dark for cameras to capture clear footage. He was alone this time. "You're not going to break," he said. It wasn't a question. "I've been trying to figure you out. Most people, they break. They run to the CO or the JAG, or they just stop coming to work. But you just keep going. Like nothing touches you." Marine said nothing. Waited. "My brother was like that." Rollins' voice cracked slightly on the word. "Tyler. Nothing touched him. He was the strongest person I ever knew. He survived 3 deployments to the worst places on Earth. He killed terrorists with his bare hands. He was everything. And then he died. And then he died. In a fucking convoy. Not in a firefight. Not saving his brothers. Just sitting in a vehicle when some piece of shit bomb went off." Rollins' hands were shaking now. He survived everything. And then he died for nothing. Marine understood. More than Rollins could possibly know she understood. Warren Drake. 30 years in the SEAL teams. More deployments than she could count. He'd pulled shrapnel out of her arm with a multi-tool while she bit down on a rifle strap. He'd kept their team alive through 72 hours of siege warfare that should have killed everyone. 8 months later, routine convoy, IED, gone. "Grief isn't an excuse," she said quietly. For what you've been doing. Grief isn't an excuse, it's an explanation, but it doesn't give you permission to hurt people who haven't hurt you. You think I need your psychology lecture? You think you know anything about what I'm going through? I think you're drowning. Marine's voice was calm, factual. I think you've been drowning since the notification team knocked on your door and you don't know how to swim anymore. So you're pulling everyone else under instead. Rollins stared at her. His face was doing something complicated. Anger warring with pain, warring with exhaustion, warring with something that might have been recognition. "Who are you?" he asked. "I'm a 54-year-old chief petty officer with bad knees and gray hair and 26 years of service that will end in anonymity. I'm nobody." "No." He shook his head. "No, you're not. I've been watching you. The way you move. The way you assess rooms. The way you dodged me in the gym like I was moving in slow motion. That's not normal. Normal is overrated. Stop deflecting." His voice rose. "Who the hell are you?" Marine looked at him for a long moment. The young Marine, the grieving brother, the bully who was really just a boy who'd lost his hero and didn't know how to process a world where heroes could die in meaningless ways. "I'm someone who learned a long time ago that the strongest thing you can do isn't hurting people who can't fight back. It's choosing not to hurt people you could destroy." She walked past him, didn't look back. "This isn't over," he called after her. "I know." Captain Marcus Webb had been watching. At 42, Webb was a prior enlisted Mustang, a man who'd risen from private to captain through decades of service and multiple combat deployments. He'd done time in force recon before commissioning. He'd seen operators, real ones, in the field where it mattered. He'd recognized something in Chief Petty Officer Cole the first day she reported to his intelligence shop. Not what she was, just that she was something. Something that didn't match her cover assignment. Something that moved wrong for a desk jockey. Something that assessed threats with professional detachment that came from training no administrative billet would provide. He'd made some calls, called in some favors, gotten access to records that required clearances above his pay grade. What he found made his blood run cold. Now he sat in his office reviewing the footage from the gym. The camera quality was poor old system bad angles, but you could see enough. You could see Rollins lunge. You could see Cole not be there when his hand arrived. You could see her create distance without appearing to move. Slip, evade, reset. That wasn't self-defense training. That wasn't even advanced combatives. That was operational movement. The kind of thing you learned in places where the wrong step got you killed. His phone buzzed. Text from an old friend at Damneck. Confirmed. JSOC, Ghost Program, 20+ years operational. Last deployment, Helmand 2019. Casualty on record is Drake W., Senior Chief, KIA Ramadi, 2020. Webb set the phone down, stared at the wall. Ghost Program. He'd heard whispers. Everyone in the special operations community had heard whispers. Female operators who could go places male operators couldn't. Who could blend into populations. Who could gather intelligence in denied areas where conventional assets failed. 47 women selected since 2010. 12 active at any given time. Embedded with SEAL teams and Army Special Mission units. And one of them was currently being harassed by a staff sergeant with an axe to grind. Webb picked up his phone, made a call. Commander Slate, this is Captain Marcus Webb at Pendleton. We have a situation involving one of your former assets. The mandatory formation was announced at 1400. No explanation given, no warning. Just a company-wide requirement to be on the parade deck at 0600 the following morning. Full combat gear. Prepare for extended field exercise. The Marines grumbled, bitched about the short notice, complained about the timing right in the middle of the training cycle, right when everyone had plans. Rollins heard the news in the gym, felt something cold settle in his gut. He'd pushed too hard, done too much. Someone had noticed, someone had complained. This was retaliation, some kind of punishment evolution designed to make everyone hate whoever had caused it, hate who he'd targeted. But when he saw the formation order's signature, Captain Webb's signature, something didn't fit. Webb was prior enlisted. Webb handled things directly, not through passive-aggressive field exercises. This wasn't punishment. This was something else. At 0600 the next morning, 140 Marines stood in ranks on the company parade deck. Dawn was breaking, painting the California sky in shades of orange and pink. The temperature was mild, 50 degrees clear skies, light wind from the west. Captain Webb stood at the front with his hands clasped behind his back. Beside him was a woman Rollins didn't recognize. Navy commander in service dress whites with ribbons that told stories about places and operations that never made the news. Silver Star, Bronze Star with V device for valor, multiple, Purple Heart, Combat Action Ribbon, and the Naval Special Warfare insignia, the SEAL Trident, on a woman who looked to be in her late 50s. Rollins felt the ground shift under his feet. This company will conduct a compressed 3-day combat leadership assessment, Webb announced. His voice carried without amplification the kind of command presence that came from leading men in actual combat. Every evolution will be graded. Results will become part of your permanent service records. Murmurs rippled through the formation, quickly suppressed, but audible. I need 10 volunteers for the assessment cadre, senior lance corporals, junior NCOs, anyone who thinks they're ready to prove what they're worth. Webb's eyes scanned the formation, settled on Rollins. I expect Staff Sergeant Rollins to volunteer, given how vocal he's been about standards and warrior culture. Every head in the formation turned, just slightly, just enough. Rollins felt the heat rise in his face. He couldn't back down, not in front of everyone, not after everything he'd said. "Yes, sir. I volunteer." "Outstanding." 9 more Marines stepped forward. The eager ones, the stupid ones. The line between courage and stupidity was thin. Then Webb's eyes found someone in the back ranks. "I'm also specifically requesting Chief Petty Officer Marine Growled participate as both evaluator and participant." The formation went silent. Navy petty officers didn't participate in Marine leadership assessments. Navy petty officers sure as hell didn't evaluate them. Marine stepped forward. Her face was neutral. Her shoulders were square. Everything about her posture said this was just another duty assignment. But something had changed in her eyes. Something had woken up. Her personnel file indicates instructor-level qualifications in small unit tactics from previous joint training assignments. Webb continued. The way he emphasized previous joint training sounded casual, but Rollins heard the code underneath. He'd made a terrible mistake. He just didn't know how terrible yet. "Equipment draw in 30 minutes, Webb said. "Assessment begins immediately." He dismissed the formation. Rollins stood frozen, watching Marine Growled walk toward the equipment building, with that economical stride that suggested she'd carried weight across hostile terrain, where falling behind meant getting left behind permanently. The commander in service dressed whites. Commander Slate, he'd overheard someone say, was watching Growled too, with an expression that looked almost like pride, or anticipation. Whatever this assessment was, it wasn't random. Whatever was about to happen, it had been planned. And Staff Sergeant Derek Rollins was at the center of something he didn't understand. Something that was about to break him down to his foundations and show him exactly what 54-year-old desk jockeys were really made of. The assessment began at 0630. It would last 72 hours. And nothing, absolutely nothing, would be the same when it ended. The first mile separated the talkers from the walkers. Rollins set an aggressive pace from the start. 60-pound pack, full combat load. He pushed hard legs, churning, trying to establish dominance through speed and suffering. His boys, Webb and Morrison, stayed close behind, matching his tempo, feeding off his energy. The other 7 volunteers spread out behind them. Young Marines, most of them. Eager, confident. The kind of confidence that came from training exercises where nobody actually died. Marine stayed in the middle of the pack. She didn't lead, didn't fall behind, just moved with that efficient economy of motion that suggested she'd done this before. Many times. In places where the weight was heavier and the stakes were measured in body bags. Staff Sergeant Thomas Wade watched from 50 meters back. He was one of the evaluators' combat engineer 2 deployments to Iraq, the kind of NCO who'd seen enough to know what real operators looked like. Something about Growled bothered him. Not in a bad way. In an uncomfortable way. Like watching a professional athlete pretend to be amateur. Like seeing someone hold back when they could be sprinting. "She hasn't changed her breathing once," Wade said quietly to Gunnery Sergeant Rivera, the other evaluator. Rivera grunted. "Neither have I. You're not carrying 60 pounds and keeping pace with Marines half your age." Rivera looked at Growled. Really looked. Then his expression shifted. "Huh. Yeah. That's not normal." "No, it's not." By mile 3, the formation had stretched. Rollins was still pushing hard, but his stride was shortening. Shoulders hunching forward, the classic signs of someone burning too hot, too early. Marine maintained the same pace, same stride length, same breathing pattern, like she'd calculated exactly how much energy she needed and was spending precisely that amount. Nothing more, nothing less. Mile 4 brought the first casualty. Lance Corporal Peters, 22, enthusiastic, not smart enough to pace himself, stumbled and went down hard. Heat exhaustion. His body had simply quit. Rollins didn't stop, didn't even look back. "Leave him," he called over his shoulder. "Weak link. We don't need him." Wade made a note on his evaluation clipboard. Leadership failure. Abandoned team member. Marine stopped. She knelt beside Peters, checked his pulse. His breathing the color of his skin. Professional assessment. Quick and efficient. "Water," she said. "Shade. He needs to cool down." We're in a tactical movement, Morrison said. He'd stopped because Rollins had finally noticed the delay. We have time to not let a Marine die from something preventable. Marin's voice was flat. Unless you want to explain to Captain Webb why you left a casualty in the field. Morrison looked at Rollins. Rollins' jaw tightened. Fine. 2 minutes. Then we move. 2 minutes was enough. Marin got Peters into shade, got water into him, got his core temperature dropping. By the time the safety vehicle arrived to collect him, he was conscious and coherent. Thank you, Chief, Peters mumbled. I'm sorry I couldn't. You pushed too hard too fast. Lesson learned. Don't apologize for physics. She rejoined the formation. Rollins was staring at her with something new in his expression. Not anger this time. Calculation. Mile 5, mile 6. The terrain shifted from road to trail to no trail at all. Rollins' form was deteriorating. Anyone could see it. His pack straps were digging into shoulders that had started to round. His steps were getting sloppy. His breathing was ragged. Marin looked the same as she had at mile 1. How are you doing that? Lance Corporal Chen asked. He'd fallen back to pace with her, too smart to burn himself out chasing Rollins' ego. Doing what? You're not even breathing hard. I'm breathing fine. That's what I mean. We're at mile 6 with 60 pounds and you look like you're on a morning stroll. Marin glanced at him. Something flickered in her eyes. Almost amusement. I've carried heavier loads across worse terrain. Where, when? Doesn't matter. She picked up her pace slightly. Focus on your own movement. You're favoring your left leg. Probably a blister forming on your right heel. Deal with it at the next rest break or it'll be a real problem by mile 10. Chen blinked. He hadn't even noticed the blister. How did you... But she was already moving ahead, closing the gap to the main formation, leaving him with questions he didn't have clearance to ask. The first simulated casualty scenario hit at mile 7. Staff Sergeant Wade stepped out from behind a tree wearing a red vest marked casualty. His right arm was wrapped in fake blood, arterial spray pattern. IED strike, Wade announced. 1 wounded, 1 ambulatory. You have 60 seconds before simulated follow-on attack. What do you do? Rollins reacted immediately, charged forward, grabbed Wade's arm, started dragging him toward cover. Wrong technique, wrong assessment, wrong everything. Stop, Marin said. Her voice cut through the chaos like a blade. Command voice. The kind that made people obey before their conscious mind processed the instruction. Rollins stopped, stared at her. You didn't assess the casualty. You didn't check for spinal injury. You didn't establish security. You just grabbed him and started moving. He's bleeding out. Time matters. Time matters less than not killing your casualty by severing his spine during transport. Marin moved to Wade's side. Permission to demonstrate proper TCC protocol, Staff Sergeant. Wade's eyes met hers. Something passed between them. Recognition. Understanding. Granted. Marin knelt beside him. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency. Check breathing. Check circulation. Check for tension, pneumothorax. Check for spinal compromise. Clear, she said. Arterial bleed, upper extremity, no spinal involvement. Tourniquet. She had the tourniquet applied in 8 seconds. Proper placement high and tight above the wound. Windlass twisted until bleeding stopped. Time marked on Wade's forehead in grease pencil. Security, she continued. Chen Morrison cover those angles. Rollins call for Cassavac. Everyone else establish a perimeter. The Marines moved. Not because she outranked them, she didn't. Because her voice carried authority that transcended rank. The kind of authority that came from having done this for real, when the blood was real and the dying was real, and the wrong decision meant someone went home in a bag. Wade watched her work. His expression said everything his words wouldn't. Where did you learn this? Who are you? Casualty stabilized, Marin announced. Ready for transport. She stood, brushed dirt off her knees, looked at Rollins. That's how you keep them alive. Questions? Rollins had none. His face was pale. Something in his worldview was cracking. Continue movement, Wade said. Mile 8. Pick up the pace. They continued. The gap between Marine and everyone else became more apparent with each passing mile. By mile 9, Morrison dropped out. Heat, exhaustion, pride that wouldn't let him ask for help until his body made the decision for him. By mile 10, 3 more Marines were gone. Bodies didn't negotiate. When they were done, they were done. Rollins kept moving through sheer stubborn refusal to quit. His form was destroyed. His stride was a shuffle. His breathing sounded like someone drowning on dry land. But he kept moving. Marine had to give him credit for that. Whatever else he was, bully-grieving brother, angry young man who didn't know how to process his pain, he wasn't a quitter. Mile 11. Mile 12. Only 6 of the original 10 crossed the finish line under their own power. Rollins collapsed the moment he stopped moving, hands on knees, dry heaving, looking like death warmed over and served cold. Marine walked across the line looking like she could do another 12 miles without breaking stride. Wade and Rivera exchanged glances. "She's not even sweating," Rivera said. "She's sweating. She's just controlling it." "That's not. I know what that's not." Wade's voice was quiet. "I've seen operators gunny, real ones, in Iraq. They move like that. They conserve like that. They assess like that. She's a desk jockey, training liaison. Her file says whatever someone wanted it to say." Rivera fell silent, thinking. Captain Webb gave them 15 minutes to recover. Then he announced the next evolution. Building clearance, limited intelligence, 4-person teams. This was where things would get interesting. Rollins immediately tried to take charge. He was standing now, still breathing hard, but trying to project authority through volume and aggression. "Okay, listen up. We breach hard and fast. I go first. Webb, you're on my 6. Morrison," he stopped. Remembered Morrison was gone. "Chen, you're 3rd. We flood the room, overwhelm any resistance through speed and violence of action." It sounded good. If you'd learned tactics from action movies, it would get everyone killed in about 30 seconds if the bullets were real. "What about fatal funnels?" Chen asked. "What about them?" "Doorways. We stack outside, we're bunched. 1 grenade kills everyone. We rush through, we're silhouetted. Easy targets." Rollins waved him off. "Speed negates that. We move too fast for them to react." Marine had been watching this disaster develop for 90 seconds. Watching Rollins ignore basic doctrine. Watching him confuse aggression with tactics. She could let it fail. Let him learn through failure. But Chen was in that stack, and Chen had asked the right questions. "May I make a recommendation, Staff Sergeant?" she said, addressing Wade. Wade glanced at Captain Webb, who was observing from 30 meters back. Webb nodded. "Proceed, Chief." Marine found a clear patch of dirt, used a stick to sketch the building layout they'd been given. 4-man stack on the left side of the door, not centered. Fatal funnel is here. She marked an X. Anyone standing there when the door opens is in the kill zone. She drew clean lines, precise angles. Support by fire position here. Elevated if possible. Overlapping fields of fire. They can see the door, but they're not exposed to it. Her stick moved with certainty. Breach team enters in sequence. First man button hooks left. Second man button hooks right. Never cross the center of the doorway. That's the fatal funnel. You clear corners first. Weapons up. Verbal communication. Clear left. Clear right. Everyone knows the status. She referenced MCWP 3-35.3 from memory. Marine Corps warfighting publication. Military operations on urbanized terrain. The doctrine manual everyone was supposed to know, but most people had only skimmed. She quoted page numbers, section headings, specific techniques. This is progressive clearing, room to hallway to next room. You maintain security throughout. You don't rush. You move with purpose. But you don't sacrifice security for speed, because speed without security gets people killed. The dirt showed a tactical plan that was textbook perfect. Not because it was complicated, because it was simple. Because it prioritized the principles that mattered: security, communication, progressive movement. My father learned these lessons from Beirut, Marine said quietly. October 1983. Barracks bombing killed 220 Marines in one morning. Fatal funnels, bad security, decisions made for speed instead of safety. She paused. We don't repeat those mistakes. That's what doctrine is for. The clearing went silent. Wade looked at the sketch, looked at Marine, looked at Webb. Execute Chief Cole's plan, he said. Rollins started to argue. I'm the ranking. That wasn't a suggestion, Staff Sergeant. Wade's voice went hard. That was an order. They executed the plan. 0 simulated casualties, smooth movement, professional clearing. When they finished, Rivera walked over to Wade. That wasn't training, he said quietly. That was muscle memory. She's done this for real. Wade nodded slowly. Yeah, she has. The second day brought the combat casualty care evolution. This was designed to break people. Multiple simulated casualties, limited supplies, blank rounds cracking overhead, pyrotechnics filling the air with smoke and chaos, the kind of scenario where most people froze because their training couldn't override their panic. 4 casualties appeared simultaneously when the flashbangs detonated. Casualty 1 sucking chest wound. Tension pneumothorax if not treated immediately. Casualty 2 femoral artery bleed. Minutes to live without intervention. Casualty 3 traumatic amputation lower leg. Casualty 4 head injury unconscious airway compromise. Rollins ran to the closest casualty. Not the most critical, just the closest. He tried to apply a chest seal without checking for tension pneumothorax first. Wrong priority. Wrong procedure. Wrong everything. Chen tried to apply a tourniquet but placed it too low. Wouldn't stop arterial bleeding. Would just cause pain without solving the problem. 2 other Marines were frozen, staring at the casualties, unable to process which one to treat first. Marine scanned all 4 in 3 seconds. Triage. The skill that separated people who saved lives from people who tried hard but failed. Chen covering fire from that berm. 3-round bursts. Conserve ammunition. You're protecting us, not winning the firefight. Her voice cut through the chaos. Command voice. Chen moved without thinking. Obeyed without questioning. Marine went to casualty 1, the tension pneumothorax. She pushed Rollins aside. Not roughly, just firmly. Step back. Watch. Her hands moved with efficiency that came from practice. Real practice. In real situations where the blood was real and the dying was real. Check for tracheal deviation. Check for distended neck veins. Both present. This is tension pneumothorax, she said while she worked. Air trapped in the chest cavity. Collapses the lung. Compresses the heart. He dies in minutes without treatment. She opened a chest seal package. Applied it during exhalation. Created a one-way valve. Seal goes on like this. Air out, not in. Monitor for increased respiratory distress. If pressure builds, you burp the seal. She demonstrated. Release, reseal. She looked at Rollins. You would have killed him. Seal without decompression just adds more pressure. Basic TCC. She moved to casualty 2 before he could respond. The femoral bleed. Tourniquet goes here, high and tight, above the wound, not on the wound. She twisted the windlass, tightened until bleeding stopped, grabbed a marker, wrote directly on the casualty's forehead. Mark the time. 0847. He has 2 hours before we worry about the limb. Life over limb. Always. Casualty 3. The amputation. Good placement, Chen. Tighten 2 more clicks. She packed the wound with combat gauze. Direct pressure. Don't be gentle. Push until bleeding stops. Casualty 4. Head injury. Airway breathing circulation. All adequate. Recovery position. Monitor every 5 minutes. He's stable. These 3 weren't. 4 minutes. All 4 casualties stabilized. And she'd done it while blank rounds cracked overhead and someone was screaming contradictory orders and the whole world had turned into chaos. But there was one moment, just one, where her hands moved to a position that wasn't in the standard TCC manual, a technique for treating casualties in confined spaces. SEAL team specific. Used when you couldn't lay someone flat because you were in a tight corridor or a vehicle. She'd done it without thinking. Muscle memory. Wade saw it. Rivera saw it. They exchanged looks that said more than words ever could. That's not something you learn in a classroom. That's something you learn downrange. When mistakes mean body bags. Rollins was sitting in the dirt, watching Marine work. Something had broken in his expression. The arrogance was cracking. The certainty was fracturing. He'd assaulted a desk jockey, a 54-year-old administrative coordinator who pushed papers. Except she wasn't. She was something else entirely. And he was just beginning to understand how badly he'd miscalculated. Evaluation complete, Wade announced. All 4 casualties marked as saved. 0 preventable deaths. He paused. Looked at Marine. Outstanding performance, Chief. She nodded. Said nothing. Walked away to clean the fake blood off her hands. But her eyes were different now. The operator was fully awake. And the next evolution was coming. The 3rd day brought the crusher. 24-hour patrol-based defense. No sleep. Continuous security. Leadership rotations every 4 hours. Everything that mattered in combat compressed into a single day and night, where exhaustion became the enemy and mistakes multiplied exponentially. By hour 6, Rollins was making decent decisions. His initial defensive positions were solid. He understood basic principles. But understanding and executing were different things, and the gap widened as the hours accumulated. By hour 12, his decisions were slowing. He forgot to rotate security. Left one Marine on watch for 3 hours straight. That Marine started missing threats because his attention had eroded. Marine stepped in quietly. Daniels has been on post for 3 hours. He needs rotation or he'll miss something that kills us. Rollins looked at her, nodded, adjusted. He was accepting her corrections now. The ego had cracked enough that he could learn. By hour 18, Rollins was making dangerous errors. He wanted to send a 2-man patrol without checking communications first. Comms check before movement, Marine said. If they hit trouble, we need to hear it. He'd forgotten to pre-position casualty equipment. Bags go here, at each fighting position, not in the center where we can't reach them under fire. He was clustering personnel. Spread out. 1 grenade shouldn't kill 3 Marines. By hour 22, Rollins was barely functional. Micro-sleeping, making decisions that would get everyone killed in a real scenario. He tried to reposition a machine gun team to a location with no cover and limited fields of fire. Marine intervened. Repositioned the team. Explained why. Rollins didn't argue, just nodded and tried to stay awake. Wade watched all of this, watched how Marine stayed sharp through 24 hours of continuous operations while everyone else deteriorated. How she maintained situational awareness when others lost focus. How she caught mistakes before they cascaded into disasters. How she moved through the patrol base with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd done this before. Really done this, in places where patrol bases got overrun and people died. Hour 24. Only 4 of the original 6 were still functional. Rollins was one of them barely. Hanging on through sheer stubborn refusal to quit, even though his decision-making had collapsed hours ago. Marine looked ready to continue indefinitely. Index, Captain Webb announced. Evolution complete. The participants collapsed where they stood, too exhausted to move, too exhausted to care. Webb told them to hydrate, eat, get cleaned up. Formation in 2 hours on the parade deck. Everyone required to attend. No exceptions. When they formed up 2 hours later, clean but destroyed, there was someone new standing next to Captain Webb. Commander Elizabeth Slate, 58 years old, iron gray hair and a regulation bun. Eyes that had seen things most people couldn't imagine. And on her chest, among the ribbons and decorations that told stories about classified operations and denied areas, one insignia stood out. The Naval Special Warfare Trident. The seal pin. On a woman who looked like she could be someone's grandmother. Rollins felt his blood turn to ice. Commander Slate's eyes swept the formation, settled on Marine Cole for exactly 3 seconds. Then she began to speak. and everything Derek Rawlins thought he understood about the world shattered into 1,000 pieces. Commander Slate let the silence stretch. 140 Marines stood at attention, exhausted and confused, waiting for an explanation that would make sense of the last 72 hours. The 10 assessment participants stood in the front row, what was left of them. Broken down, hollowed out, stripped of every assumption they'd carried into this evolution. Rawlins could barely stand. His legs trembled. His vision kept blurring at the edges. 3 days without real sleep. 3 days of being outperformed by a woman old enough to be his mother. 3 days of watching everything he believed about himself crumble into dust. "I'm going to tell you about an operation," Commander Slate said. Her voice carried across the parade deck without amplification. "Command presence, the kind you couldn't fake. An operation that was classified until 6 months ago. An operation that most of you have never heard of, because the people who conducted it didn't do it for recognition. They did it because it needed to be done." She paused. Let the words settle. "Does anyone here recognize the designation Operation Desert Phantom?" Silence. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Helmand Province, November 2019. A 4-person SEAL element and 1 Navy intelligence specialist were inserted to extract a high-value target. Taliban commander with intelligence on planned attacks against American forces throughout Afghanistan. Rawlins felt something cold crawling up his spine. The mission was compromised within 6 hours of insertion. Local militia forces, over 200 fighters, surrounded the compound where the team had taken position, cut off all extraction routes, destroyed the primary and secondary exfil points. Slate's eyes swept the formation. The team held that compound for 72 hours, 3 days, against numerically superior forces, with limited ammunition, no air support, no reinforcements, no hope of rescue. She let that sink in. 72 hours, the same length as this assessment, except the bullets were real, the blood was real, the dying was real. Rawlins's hands were shaking. He couldn't make them stop. All 5 operators survived. The HVT was successfully extracted. The intelligence prevented attacks that would have killed over 300 American personnel across 4 provinces. Slate turned slightly. Her eyes found Marine Growled. The Navy intelligence specialist on that operation was Cryptologic Technician Chief Marine Growled. The parade deck went absolutely still. Rawlins stopped breathing. His vision tunneled. The ground felt like it was tilting under his feet. He'd assaulted her, shoved her in a mess hall full of witnesses, called her a bitch, told her to know her place. He'd picked a fight with someone who'd survived 72 hours of siege warfare against 200 Taliban fighters. Chief Cole has spent the last 25 years attached to JSOC intelligence detachments supporting naval special warfare operations. Slate continued. Her work has taken her to denied areas across 4 continents: Iraq, Afghanistan, Yemen, Syria. Places that don't appear on any official map. Operations that will never be acknowledged by any government. Wade made a sound. Quiet. Almost involuntary. The sound of pieces clicking into place. She wasn't just intelligence support. Slate's voice hardened. She was a designated marksman. Ghost program. The kind of operator who could go places male operators couldn't. Who could blend into populations. Who could gather intelligence in denied areas where conventional assets failed. Rawlins' knees buckled. He caught himself. Forced himself to stay standing through sheer willpower. Ghost program. He'd heard whispers. Everyone in the special operations community had heard whispers. Female operators embedded with SEAL teams. Doing work that never made the news. Dying in places that didn't officially exist. And he'd shoved one of them into a table and told her to know her place. 23 confirmed long-range engagements, Slate said. 4 bronze stars with V device, 2 purple hearts, a silver star that she never talks about because the operation it came from is still classified above most of your clearance levels. Chen was staring at Marin with an expression of pure shock. So was Morrison, who'd been evacuated on day 2, but had returned for the final formation. So was every single Marine on that parade deck. Her call sign was patience. Slate almost smiled. Because she could wait longer than anyone, could stay motionless for 18 hours, could take shots at ranges that most snipers wouldn't attempt, could read wind and distance and trajectory with a precision that bordered on supernatural. Marine stood at attention, face neutral, eyes forward. Everything about her posture said this wasn't how she'd wanted this to happen. She'd wanted to stay hidden, stay quiet, let the past stay buried. But Rollins had forced this. His harassment, his escalation, his inability to leave things alone. Chief Cole requested transfer out of operational status 4 years ago, Slate continued. After her team leader was killed in Ramadi, Senior Chief Warren Drake, 30 years in the SEAL teams, legendary sniper, the man who trained her. Something flickered in Marine's eyes. Just for a moment, pain that time hadn't healed. Drake survived Operation Desert Phantom, survived Yemen, survived Syria, survived a dozen operations that should have killed him. Slate's voice softened slightly. 8 months after Helmand, he was killed by an IED on a routine convoy. The kind of death that doesn't make sense. The kind that proves combat doesn't care about skill or reputation or how many enemies you've defeated. Rollins felt tears burning his eyes. Tyler. His brother had died the same way. Routine convoy. IED. Gone. Chief Cole made a promise in that Helmand compound, Slate said. If she survived, she'd try to live as something other than a weapon. She'd try to be normal. She'd try to find peace. Slate turned to look directly at Rollins. And then someone decided she needed to be put in her place. Every eye on the parade deck shifted to Rollins. He felt the weight of their stares like physical pressure, judgment, contempt. The dawning realization of what he'd done. He'd attacked a war hero, a decorated operator, a woman who'd done more in one deployment than he'd do in his entire career. And she'd let him. She'd let him shove her, let him harass her, let him spread his poison without responding, because she'd made a promise to a dead man that she wouldn't be the weapon anymore. Chief Cole, Slate's voice shifted, formal now. Step forward. Marine moved. 3 steps, crisp and precise. The assessment you just participated in wasn't random. It wasn't punishment. It was evaluation. Slate reached into her pocket, pulled out a small box. Captain Webb submitted a request for your permanent assignment as a combat instructor with the Marine Corps Martial Arts Program at Quantico. Full instructor billet, teaching tactical movement, close quarters, combat survival techniques, combat casualty care, small unit leadership. Marine's face showed nothing, but her hands, her scarred, weathered hands, trembled slightly. Everything you've learned, everything you've done, everything you've survived, passing it forward to the next generation of warriors. Slate opened the box. Inside was a gold instructor insignia. The best operators aren't just warriors, Chief. They're teachers. They understand that survival isn't enough. You have to pass it forward. That's how the lessons stay alive. That's how the dead keep speaking. Marine looked at the insignia, looked at Slate, looked at the formation of Marines who were watching her with new eyes. My father used to say that, she said quietly. Her voice carried across the silent parade deck. Master Gunnery Sergeant Jonas Cole, Force Recon, Vietnam. He said surviving wasn't the point. Passing it forward, that was the point. Your father was a wise man. He died of Agent Orange complications when I was 22. Took 30 years for Vietnam to kill him, but it got him eventually. Marine paused. Just like combat got Warren, just like it got... She stopped, looked at Rollins. Just like it got your brother. Rollins flinched like she'd struck him. I know about Tyler, Marine continued. Marine raider, killed in Syria, IED on a convoy. Don't. Rollins' voice cracked. Don't talk about him. Why not? Because it hurts. Because every time someone says his name, you have to remember that he's gone. That the strongest person you ever knew died in a way that wasn't worthy of him. Tears were streaming down Rollins' face now. He didn't bother wiping them away. I know that pain, Staff Sergeant. I've lived with it for 4 years. Warren Drake pulled shrapnel out of my arm with a multi-tool while I bit down on a rifle strap to keep from screaming. He kept our team alive for 72 hours when everyone else would have broken. He was the best sniper I ever knew. The best teacher, the best man. Her voice didn't waver, but there was weight in it. The kind that came from carrying things that never got lighter. And then he died on a routine convoy, because combat doesn't care. It just takes. And the people left behind have to figure out how to keep living in a world that suddenly makes no sense. Rollins was shaking, his whole body, grief and exhaustion and shame all hitting at once. That's why I didn't respond when you pushed me, Marine said. Not because I couldn't, because I promised Warren that if I made it out of Helmand, I'd try to be something different, something that wasn't just violence waiting for authorization. She stepped toward him. The formation held its breath. Your brother didn't die because he was weak, Derek. He died because war doesn't care about strength. It doesn't care about skill or training or how many enemies you've killed. It just takes who it takes. And the only thing we can do, the only thing is make sure the lessons don't die with the people who learned them. Rollins's legs gave out. He went down hard knees, hitting the parade deck concrete. Sobs tearing out of his chest. 20 months of grief that he'd been holding back with anger and aggression and picking on people who couldn't fight back. It all came out at once. Marine stood over him. She didn't offer comfort, didn't pat his shoulder or tell him it would be okay. She just stood there, witness to his breaking, giving him space to fall apart. Tyler would be ashamed of what you've become, she said quietly, but he'd also understand why. Grief makes us do terrible things. The question is whether we let it define us or whether we find something better. She looked at Commander Slate. I accept the position, ma'am. Slate nodded, something like pride in her eyes. Outstanding. Report to Quantico in 2 weeks. Your first class of students will be waiting. Marine turned back to the formation, 140 Marines, all of them looking at her differently now, not as a desk jockey, not as a victim, as something else entirely. I'm going to teach them everything I know, she said, everything my father taught me, everything Warren taught me, everything Helmand and Yemen and Syria taught me, and maybe some of them will come home because of it. Some of them will survive things they shouldn't survive because someone taught them how. She looked down at Rollins, still kneeling on the concrete, still crying. And maybe some of them will learn that strength isn't about hurting people who can't fight back. It's about protecting people who need protecting. It's about choosing not to destroy even when you could. It's about finding your line and holding it no matter what pressure gets applied. She offered her hand. Rollins stared at it through tears. The hand of the woman he'd assaulted. The hand of the operator he'd underestimated. The hand of the ghost who could have killed him a dozen times over, but had chosen mercy instead. He took it. She pulled him to his feet. You have potential, Staff Sergeant. I saw it during the assessment. You don't quit. You don't break. You keep pushing even when your body is failing. That's rare. That's valuable. Rollins couldn't meet her eyes. I don't deserve. Nobody deserves anything. We earn it or we don't. The question is what you're going to do now. Keep drowning in grief and anger or find something worth fighting for. She released his hand, stepped back. Your brother chose to be a raider because he wanted to protect people. Honor that. Don't dishonor it by becoming someone he wouldn't recognize. Commander Slate cleared her throat. This assessment is concluded. All participants performed adequately. Some performed exceptionally. Her eyes lingered on Marine. Results will be entered into service records. Dismissed. The formation broke. Marines scattered, exhausted and confused and processing what they'd just witnessed. Rollins stood frozen, still processing, still trying to reconcile the woman he'd attacked with the woman who'd just offered him redemption. Wade approached him, put a hand on his shoulder. You okay, Staff Sergeant? Rollins laughed, bitter and broken. I assaulted a ghost program operator. I told a war hero to know her place. I picked a fight with someone who's killed more enemies than I've ever seen. He shook his head. No, Staff Sergeant. I'm not okay. I don't think I'll ever be okay again. Good. Rollins looked up, surprised. That means you're learning. Wade squeezed his shoulder. Chief Cole could have destroyed you, could have broken every bone in your body in that mess hall and been justified doing it. Instead, she walked away, gave you a chance to figure out who you really are. Why? Because that's what real strength looks like. Not proving you can hurt people, proving you can choose not to. Wade released him, walked away. Rollins stood alone on the parade deck watching Marine Growled disappear into the morning light. She moved like what she was, a predator who'd learned to wear sheep's clothing, a weapon who'd chosen to become a teacher, a ghost who'd decided to step into the light. And somehow, impossibly, she'd given him permission to become something better too. He didn't deserve it. But maybe he could earn it. The parade deck emptied. The assessment was over. The revelations had been made. But for Derek Rollins, standing alone with the weight of his mistakes pressing down on him, something new was beginning. Something that felt like hope. Something that felt like a second chance. He pulled out his phone, hands shaking, typed a message to his commanding officer, request to submit application for Marine Raider selection. I'm ready to start over. Sent. He didn't know if they'd accept him. Didn't know if he had what it took to become what his brother had been. But he knew one thing. He was done being the man who attacked women in mess halls. He was done drowning his grief in anger. He was done being someone Tyler would be ashamed of. Marine Growled had shown him what real strength looked like. Now it was time to find out if he had any of his own. 6 hours later, Marine sat in Captain Webb's office. The debrief had taken most of the morning. Paperwork, assessments, transfer orders. The machinery of military bureaucracy grinding through its processes. Now it was just the two of them. You could have ended him, Webb said. In the mess hall. In the gym. Any of the dozen times he pushed you. Yes. Why didn't you? Marine was quiet for a long moment. Because Warren would have been disappointed in me. Webb waited. He used to say that anyone can destroy. It's easy. It's satisfying. It's the simplest thing in the world to hurt someone who's hurting you. She paused. The hard thing is choosing not to. The hard thing is seeing the pain behind the aggression and responding to that instead of the threat. That's generous. That's survival. Different kind of survival than combat, but survival nonetheless. She looked at Webb. Rollins isn't evil. He's broken. He lost his brother and didn't know how to process it, so he turned his grief into anger and his anger into cruelty. I've seen it 100 times. Hell, I've felt it. When Drake died. Her voice tightened slightly. I wanted to hurt someone. Anyone. I wanted to make the world feel as wrong as I felt. The only thing that stopped me was the promise I'd made. And even then, it was close. But you held the line. I held the line. She almost smiled. Find your line in the shadows and hold it. That's what Warren always said. That's what I'm going to teach those Marines at Quantico. Not just how to fight. How to choose when not to. Webb nodded slowly. Commander Slate was right about you. The best operators are teachers. The best operators are the ones who make sure there are more operators after them. Survival isn't enough. You have to pass it forward. She stood, extended her hand. Webb shook it. Firm grip. The handshake of equals. Good luck at Quantico, Chief. Thank you, Captain, for orchestrating all of this. I know it wasn't coincidence. Webb's expression didn't change. I have no idea what you're talking about. Marine laughed, the first real laugh she'd allowed herself in 4 years. Of course you don't. She walked out. The California sun hit her face as she stepped onto the base's main road. Warm, bright, the kind of day that felt like possibility. Behind her, Camp Pendleton continued its eternal rhythm. Training, preparing, making warriors out of civilians. Ahead of her, Quantico waited. New students, new challenges, new opportunities to transform what she'd learned into something that protected instead of destroyed. The ghost was stepping into the light. And for the first time since Warren died, Marine Growled felt something she'd thought was gone forever. Purpose. Real purpose. Not the purpose of operations and missions and killing enemies who needed killing. The purpose of teaching, of passing forward, of making sure the lessons stayed alive. She climbed into her truck, started the engine. 2 weeks until Quantico. 2 weeks until her new life began. 2 weeks until she found out if a weapon could really become a teacher. And somewhere behind her, Derek Rollins was beginning his own journey. She hoped he'd make it. She hoped the man his brother would have been proud of was still in there somewhere, buried under the grief and the anger and the shame. She hoped she'd given him the chance Tyler would have wanted him to have. The truck pulled away from Camp Pendleton. Marine didn't look back. She never did. Quantico smelled like pine trees and gunpowder and the particular sweat of young people learning to become dangerous. Marine arrived on a Monday morning 2 weeks after leaving Pendleton. Her orders were crisp and official. Her quarters were small but functional. Her first class was scheduled for 0600 the following day. 25 Lance Corporals, fresh from infantry training, eager and confident and completely unaware of what they didn't know. She spent that first night unpacking. Not much to unpack. A duffel bag of uniforms, a small box of personal items, 2 photographs that she placed on the small desk in her quarters. The first showed Operation Desert Phantom Team. 5 operators covered in dust and dried blood exhaustion carved into every face. Warren Drake's arm around her shoulders, both of them looking at the camera with the particular expression of people who'd survived something that should have killed them. The second showed a young Marine in Vietnam-era utilities, her father. 23 years old, before Agent Orange, before the nightmares, before the slow death that took 30 years to complete. Marine looked at both photographs for a long time. "I'm going to try," she said quietly. "I'm going to try to pass it forward, like you both taught me." Neither photograph answered, but she felt their presence anyway. The next morning came fast. 5:45. Marine walked into the training facility. Her students were already there, standing in loose formation, talking among themselves. 25 young faces, 25 sets of eyes that watched her enter with barely concealed skepticism. She could read their thoughts, could see them assessing her silver-streaked hair, her 54-year-old face, her body that looked fit but not intimidating. They saw a grandmother, an administrator, someone's mom who'd wandered into the wrong building. One of them, tall, muscular, cocky smile, nudged the Marine next to him. "This is our instructor, seriously," his buddy snickered. "Maybe she's here to teach us how to file paperwork." Marine heard them, said nothing, just walked to the front of the room and stood there waiting for silence. It took them 30 seconds to notice she wasn't speaking, another 15 to get quiet. "My name is Chief Petty Officer Marine Cole," she said. Her voice was calm, conversational. "I'll be teaching you tactical movement close quarters, combat casualty care, and small unit leadership for the next 8 weeks. The tall Marine, his name tape said. Hendricks raised his hand. "Chief, no disrespect, but what's your background? I mean, what qualifies you to teach Marines?" "No disrespect, Lance Corporal. Just curious, Chief. We've all been through infantry training. We've had some serious instructors, guys who've seen combat, guys who've done the work." Marine let the question hang in the air. "Do you think I haven't?" Hendricks shifted uncomfortably. "I mean, you're Navy, and you're old female both." Scattered laughter, nervous laughter. "All 3, Chief, no offense." Marine smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. "None taken. Let me answer your question with a demonstration." She looked around the room. "I need a volunteer, someone who thinks they can take me in hand to hand." Hendricks stepped forward immediately. Of course he did. 6'2", 220 pounds of muscle and ego. The kind of young man who'd never been beaten by anyone and assumed that meant he never would be. "Rules," he asked. "Try to take me down. I'll try to stop you. First one on the ground loses." "That's it?" "That's it." Hendricks grinned, settled into a fighting stance. He was trained. She could see that. Good fundamentals, strong base, fast hands. He was also predictable, overconfident. already celebrating the victory he assumed was coming. He moved fast, right cross aimed at her temple, the kind of punch that would have knocked out most people. Marine wasn't there. She'd slipped left, redirected his momentum with a subtle touch to his extended arm, and put him on the mat before his brain could process what had happened. 1.5 seconds. He was on his back, staring at the ceiling with her knee on his chest and her hand positioned exactly where a killing blow would land. The room went dead silent. "That's my background," Marine said. She released him, stood, offered her hand. Hendricks took it. His face was pale, shocked, recalculating everything he thought he knew. Questions. Nobody had questions. Good, let's begin. The first week was about fundamentals, movement, positioning, awareness, the basic building blocks that separated survivors from casualties. Marine taught like Warren had taught her, not through lectures, through demonstration, through repetition, through failure and correction and more failure until the movements became instinct. Combat doesn't care about your training, she told them during a close quarters drill. It doesn't care about your confidence or your ego or how tough you think you are. It only cares about execution. Can you do the right thing at the right time without thinking about it? She demonstrated a room-clearing technique, button hook entry, corner clearing, the precise choreography that kept people alive when buildings had bad guys inside them. Your conscious mind is too slow, she continued. By the time you think about what to do, you're already dead. The only way to survive is to make the movements automatic. Drill them until your body knows them better than your brain does. They drilled, hour after hour, day after day. Some of them complained. Some of them quit. Some of them pushed through and started to understand. By the end of week 2, Hendricks was one of her best students. "Chief," he asked after a particularly brutal training session, "can I ask you something personal?" "You can ask. I might not answer." "The way you move, the way you teach, it's different from our other instructors. More, I don't know, more real." "More real how?" "Like you've actually done it, not just trained for it, actually done it, in places where it mattered." Marine was quiet for a moment. "I have." "Where?" "Places that don't appear on maps, operations that never made the news, the kind of work that gets done in shadows and stays there." Hendricks nodded slowly. "Is it true what I heard about Helmand? About 72 hours against 200 fighters?" "Where did you hear that?" "Word gets around. The other instructors talk. They say you were ghost program." Marine looked at him, evaluated, decided. "Yes, it's true." "Holy shit," Hendricks breathed. "Sorry. I mean, that's why I'm here. Not to relive it. Not to brag about it. To make sure the lessons don't die with the people who learned them." "Is that why you teach?" "That's exactly why I teach." Hendricks straightened slightly. Something in his expression had shifted. The cocky young Marine was still there, but there was something else now. Respect, real respect, the kind that had to be earned. "Thank you, Chief, for telling me." "Don't thank me, Lance Corporal. Just learn. That's the only thanks I need." Week 4 brought the first real test. Force-on-force training. Simunition rounds. The kind of exercise that hurt when you made mistakes and taught lessons that stuck because pain was an excellent teacher. Marine's students went up against a team of experienced operators, former Marines who'd done multiple deployments, men who knew their business and didn't go easy on students. The first engagement was a massacre. Her students took 80% casualties in under 2 minutes. "Reset," Marine called. "We're doing it again." "Chief, we just got destroyed." "I know. That's why we're doing it again. Learning happens in the failure. Get up, reset, go again." They went again. 60% casualties this time. Better, not good enough. Again, 40%. Again, 20%. By the fifth iteration, her students were fighting smart, using cover, communicating, moving as a team instead of individuals. They won the sixth engagement, barely, but they won. That's the lesson, Marine told them afterward. You don't get better by succeeding. You get better by failing and figuring out why. Every mistake is information. Every casualty is a lesson. The question is whether you're paying attention. Hendricks was bleeding from a simunition hit to his arm. He was grinning anyway. Chief, I've never learned that fast before. Pain is an excellent teacher. So is humiliation. So is watching your teammates go down because you made a bad decision. She paused. Remember that feeling. The next time it might be real. The next time those casualties might not get back up. The grin faded. Good. He was learning. Week 6 brought news from Pendleton. Staff Sergeant Wade sent a message. Brief. Professional. But the content made Marine stop what she was doing and read it twice. Rollins made it through Raider selection. Phase 1 complete. Instructors say he's different, quieter, more focused, doesn't quit, doesn't complain, just works. They're watching him closely. Potential is there. Marine read it a third time. Then she typed a response. Good. Everyone deserves a chance to become who they're supposed to be. Sent. She put the phone away, went back to her lesson plans. But something warm had settled in her chest. Something that felt like hope. Rollins was finding his line, holding it. Tyler would have been proud. Week 7 brought the first letter. It arrived in her office mailbox. Handwritten, no return address, just her name and duty station. She opened it, expecting administrative correspondence. Found something else entirely. Chief Cole. You don't know me. My name is Corporal David Thorne. My father was Senior Chief Warren Drake. Marine's hands went cold. Anne's went. She had to set the letter down. Had to take 3 breaths before she could continue reading. I know what you meant to him. I found letters he wrote about you, about Helmand, about how you were the best operator he ever trained. He said you had the patience of a sniper and the heart of a warrior. He said you'd saved his life more times than he could count. I also know you were with him at the end, at Helmand, I mean. The 72 hours. I know he pulled shrapnel out of your arm. I know you made a promise to him about trying to live as something other than a weapon. I wanted you to know that he would be proud of what you're doing now. Teaching. Passing it forward. That's what he believed in. That's what he died believing. My father talked about you like you were family. So I wanted to reach out, to say thank you, for being there with him, for keeping the promise. If you ever want to talk about him, I'd like that. He didn't talk much about his work, but I know you knew him in ways we couldn't. I'd like to hear those stories someday. David Thorne Marine sat in her office for a long time after reading the letter. Warren had a son. She'd known that technically, had seen photographs, had heard Warren mention him occasionally, but she'd never reached out, never made contact, had been too buried in her own grief to think about his family's grief. Shame washed over her. She should have called, should have visited, should have done something to honor the man who'd saved her life a dozen times over. Instead, she'd hidden, retreated, let the promise to become something other than a weapon turn into an excuse to avoid feeling anything at all. She picked up a pen, started writing. David, thank you for your letter. Thank you for reaching out. Your father was the finest operator I ever served with and the finest man I ever knew. He talked about you more than you might realize. In Helmand during those 72 hours, he told me about your baseball games, your graduation, your wedding. He carried a photograph of you in his kit, said looking at it reminded him why he was fighting. I should have contacted you years ago. I'm sorry I didn't. Grief makes cowards of us all, and I've been a coward for too long. I would be honored to tell you stories about your father. The good ones. The ones that show who he really was when the uniforms came off and we were just people trying to survive. He saved my life in Helmand. Not just physically. He gave me a reason to keep going when I wanted to give up. The promise I made to him to become something other than a weapon, that's the only reason I'm still here, still teaching, still passing forward what he taught me. Your father's legacy lives in every Marine I train, every life saved because someone remembered what he taught them. That's not nothing. That's everything. I'm at Quantico now. If you ever want to visit, the door is open. Marine. She sealed the letter, addressed it, sent it, then she went back to teaching. Because that's what Warren would have wanted. That's what surviving meant. Week 8. Final evaluations. 23 of the original 25 students had made it through. 2 had washed out, 1 for injury, 1 for inability to meet standards. The 23 who remained were different people than the ones who'd walked in 8 weeks ago. Harder, smarter, more capable. Marine watched them execute their final assessment. Room clearing, casualty care, small unit tactics. Everything she'd taught them demonstrated under pressure. They moved like operators now. Not perfect. They had years of experience ahead of them before they'd be perfect, but competent, professional, lethal in the way that real warriors were lethal. Hendricks was outstanding. He'd transformed from cocky gym warrior to disciplined tactician. His movements were efficient. His decisions were sound. His leadership was exactly what you wanted in someone who might one day lead Marines into combat. Evaluation complete, Marine announced when the final exercise ended. All remaining candidates pass. Certificates will be issued tomorrow. The students cheered, hugged each other, celebrated in the way young people celebrated accomplishments. Marine watched them with something she hadn't felt in a long time. Pride. Not in herself, in them, in what they'd become, in the transformation that 8 weeks of proper training could accomplish. Hendricks approached her. He was sweating, exhausted, grinning. "Chief, thank you." "For what?" "For not giving up on me. That first day when you put me on the mat, I was embarrassed, angry. I wanted to hate you. And now I want to be you, or at least I want to be the kind of operator you were. Someone who actually knows their craft, not just someone who talks about it." Marine looked at him, saw the young Marine he was, saw the operator he could become. "You have potential, Hendricks. Don't waste it." "I won't, Chief. I promise." She believed him. That night, another message arrived. Unknown number. She almost deleted it without reading, but something made her open it. 3 sentences. "Chief Cole, thank you for not ending me in the mess hall. You taught me more than any drill instructor ever did. Derek Rollins." Marine read it twice, didn't respond. Some lessons didn't need responses. Some growth happened in silence. But she saved the message, because it proved something important. People could change. People could grow. People could become better than their worst moments. And sometimes all it took was someone showing them what real strength looked like. She closed her phone, went to the window, looked out at Quantico's training grounds. Somewhere out there, Marines were training, learning, preparing for wars they might never fight, becoming the warriors their country needed them to be. And somewhere at Raider Selection, Derek Rollins was doing the same thing, fighting through Phase 1, proving he was more than the grieving bully who'd attacked a woman in a mess hall. The ghost was teaching now. The weapon had become a guardian. And the lessons, Warren's lessons, her father's lessons, every hard-won piece of knowledge purchased with blood and sacrifice were flowing forward, into the next generation, into the future, into lives that might be saved because someone remembered what Marine Cole had taught them. She thought about Warren, about her father, about all the operators she'd served with who hadn't made it home. "I'm doing it," she whispered to the darkness. "I'm passing it forward, just like you wanted." The darkness didn't answer, but she felt them anyway. Warren and Jonas and all the others, watching, approving. The ghost had found her purpose, and that was enough. 6 months changed everything. Marine's first class had graduated. 23 combat instructors now scattered across Marine bases worldwide, passing knowledge forward exponentially. Letters arrived weekly, emails, messages from deployment zones she couldn't name. "Your training saved my team in Kandahar. The casualty care techniques. We used everything you taught us. Everyone survived. Chief Cole, the room clearing drill. You made us repeat 50 times. It saved 3 Marines last week. Fatal funnel. Just like you said. We remembered. I'm writing this from a fob I can't name. Wanted you to know that your voice is in my head every time we go outside the wire. Combat doesn't care about your ego. It only cares about execution. I'm still here because of that. She kept every letter, every message, filed them in a box under her desk that was getting too full. Warren's voice in her memory. Surviving isn't enough. You have to pass it forward. She was passing it forward. Her second class was halfway through training. 30 students this time. Word had spread. Requests for her instruction came from units across the Corps. Her methods were being studied, replicated, built into training curricula. The Ghost was becoming a legend. But legends attracted attention, not all of it welcome. The call came on a Tuesday morning. Commander Slate's voice was tight, controlled, the voice of someone delivering bad news professionally. Chief Cole, we have a situation. Ma'am, active shooter scenario, training range 4, something went wrong. Marin's blood went cold. Went wrong how? Live ammunition mixed with training rounds, logistics failure, 2 Marines wounded, shooter is barricaded, confused, possibly concussed from an earlier incident. He doesn't know what's happening. Casualties. Stable for now, but he's got a loaded weapon and he's not responding to commands. The response team is en route, but they're 20 minutes out. 20 minutes. In an active shooter situation, 20 minutes was forever. I'm 3 minutes away, Marin said. Chief, this isn't your... I'm 3 minutes away, Commander, I'm going. She hung up before Slate could argue. Marin ran. 3 minutes, 180 seconds. Her mind was already working, calculating, assessing, training range 4. She knew the layout, had taught there dozens of times. Single building, multiple rooms, limited exits, live ammunition, confused shooter, wounded Marines. The operator was awake now, fully awake. Every instinct she'd spent 4 years suppressing was flooding back. Find your line, hold it. She reached the range in 2 minutes 40 seconds. Chaos greeted her. Marines scattered behind cover, shouting. Someone was screaming orders that nobody was following. 2 wounded students lay in the open maybe 30 meters from the building entrance. One was moving, the other wasn't. A young lieutenant was trying to coordinate a response. He looked terrified, overwhelmed, completely out of his depth. Lieutenant, Marin's command voice cut through the noise. Status! He spun. Saw her. Relief and confusion warred on his face. Chief Cole, what are you... Status. Now. Lance Corporal Peters is inside. He was loading magazines when something happened. Possible negligent discharge. He hit his head, got confused. Now he's got a loaded rifle and he's not responding to commands. Peters. Marin knew him. Good kid. Nervous. Eager to please. The kind of student who tried too hard and made mistakes because of it. The wounded. Corporal Hendricks and Lance Corporal Davis. Hendricks took a round in the shoulder. Davis. Davis what? Chest wound. He's not moving. Hendricks. Her student. The cocky Marine who'd become one of her best. Something cold and sharp settled in Marin's chest. Has anyone approached? We tried. Peters fired 3 rounds. Warning shots, I think. He's yelling about threats. About enemies. I don't think he knows where he is. Concussion. Confusion. A loaded weapon and a mind that couldn't process reality. This wasn't an active shooter situation. This was a tragedy waiting to happen. Everyone hold position, Marin said. Nobody moves until I say. Chief, you can't. Watch me. She moved toward the building. Chief Cole. The lieutenant's voice cracked. That's insane. He'll shoot you. Marin didn't stop. Didn't slow down. Patience is the sniper's breath. Wait for the shot that matters. She reached the edge of cover. 30 meters of open ground between her and the wounded Marines. 30 meters where Peters could see her, could shoot her. She stepped into the open. Peters! Her voice carried across the range, calm, controlled. the voice of someone who'd talked down panicked operators in worse situations than this. Peters, it's Chief Cole. I'm coming to help the wounded. I'm not armed. I'm not a threat. A rifle barrel appeared in one of the building's windows, pointed at her. Stay back. Peter's voice was high, panicked. I don't know what's happening. I don't know what's real. I know, son. You hit your head. You're confused. That's okay. We're going to figure this out together. She kept walking, slow, deliberate, hands visible. I said, stay back. I can't do that, Peters. Hendricks is bleeding. Davis might be dying. I need to help them. I don't know if you're real. You might be one of them. One of who? The enemy. The ones from the training scenario I can't tell anymore. Concussion. Severe. He'd lost the ability to distinguish simulation from reality. Peters listened to my voice. Do you remember me, Chief Cole, I taught your class last month? Room clearing. Casualty care. You were worried about the fatal funnel drill. Silence. The rifle barrel wavered. Chief? Cole. That's right. I'm real, Peters. This is real. And those are real Marines bleeding on the ground. I need you to let me help them. I can't. Yes, you can. You're a Marine. You don't let your brothers die. That's who you are. That's what you trained for. She was 15 meters from Hendricks now, could see the blood soaking through his uniform, could see the shallow rise and fall of his chest. He was alive. Barely. Davis wasn't moving at all. Peters, I'm going to kneel down and help Hendricks. I'm not going to hurt you. I'm not going to let anyone hurt you. But I need you to lower that weapon. I can't. What if you're lying? What if this is a test? It's not a test. It's me, Chief Cole. The woman who put you on the mat on day 1 and made you do the room clearing drill until you got it right. Remember? Another long silence. Then the rifle barrel dropped. Chief Cole, it's really you. It's really me. Now let me work. She dropped to her knees beside Hendricks. His eyes were open, glazed with pain but conscious. Chief, he gasped. Didn't expect cavalry. Shut up and let me work. Her hands were already moving, assessing the wound, shoulder, through and through, bleeding heavily but not arterial. Davis. Hendricks tried to turn his head. Check Davis. Hendricks focused on breathing. I'll get to Davis. She applied pressure, grabbed the trauma kit from his vest, packed the wound, applied a pressure dressing. You're going to be fine. It's a clean wound. Hurts like hell, but you'll live. Davis. I know. She moved to Davis. Chest wound, left side, no exit wound. The round was still inside, but he was breathing, shallow, irregular, but breathing. Davis, can you hear me? No response. Davis. His eyes fluttered, opened, focused on her face. Chief. Cole. Stay with me, Davis. Help is coming. You just need to hold on. Can't feel my legs. Marin's heart clenched, but her hands kept working. Seal the wound. Manage the airway. Keep him talking. That's the shock. It's normal. You're going to be fine. Liar. Davis almost smiled. You taught us never lie to casualties. I also taught you to never give up, so don't. Sirens in the distance, getting closer. The response team was almost here. Peters, Marin called. Medical is incoming. I need you to put down the weapon and come out. Hands up, slow movements. Nobody's going to hurt you. I shot them. Peter's voice broke. I shot my brothers. I didn't mean to. I didn't know they were real. I know. It was an accident. A terrible accident. But you can't help them by staying in there. You can help them by coming out and letting the medics through. Long silence. Then the building door opened. Peters walked out, hands empty, raised, tears streaming down his face. I didn't mean to. I didn't mean to. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. 2 Marines moved to secure him, gently, carefully. This wasn't an enemy combatant. This was a wounded kid who'd made a terrible mistake. The medical team arrived 90 seconds later, took over care for Hendricks and Davis. Professional, efficient, everything Marine had bought them time for. She stepped back, let them work. Her hands were covered in blood. Her uniform was soaked. The adrenaline that had carried her through was starting to fade, leaving exhaustion in its wake. Commander Slate appeared beside her. "Chief Cole, ma'am?" That was either the bravest thing I've ever seen or the most reckless. Probably both. Slate was quiet for a moment. "Hendricks is going to make it. Davis is critical but stable. They're airlifting him to Bethesda. Peters, concussion, severe. He lost time, lost orientation. The investigation will determine what happened with the ammunition mix-up, but it wasn't his fault." Marine nodded, said nothing. "You walked into a live shooter situation unarmed, talked down a confused Marine with a loaded weapon, saved 2 lives while bullets could have been flying. I did what needed to be done. That's exactly what operators say." Slate's voice was strange, almost amused. "After 25 years of service, 4 years of trying to be normal, you still can't help being what you are." Marine looked at her. "What am I?" "A guardian. Someone who runs toward danger when everyone else runs away. Someone who can't stand by while people are dying." Slate paused. "Warren would be proud." Marine's throat tightened. "Thank you, ma'am." "Thank yourself. And then go get cleaned up. You look like hell." 2 weeks later, Hendricks was back at Quantico, arm in a sling, grinning like an idiot. "Chief Cole." "Hendricks, shouldn't you be on medical leave?" "Doctor cleared me for light duty. I couldn't stay away." He shifted awkwardly. "I wanted to thank you for what you did." "I did my job. You walked into gunfire for me. That's more than a job." Marine looked at him. The young Marine who'd challenged her on day 1, who'd become one of her best students, who was standing here alive because she'd made a choice to act instead of wait. "How's Davis?" "Surgery went well. He'll need months of rehab, but he's going to walk again. They thought he might be paralyzed, but..." Hendricks' voice caught. "He's going to be okay. Because you got to him in time. That's good." "That's more than good, Chief. That's everything." She didn't know what to say, so she said nothing. Hendricks pulled something from his pocket. A letter, folded and worn. "This came for you, through official channels. I was asked to deliver it personally." Marine took the letter, opened it. "Chief Cole, I completed Raider selection. Phase 2 finished last week. I'm officially a Marine Raider now. I wanted you to know because none of this would have happened without you. Not because you trained me, you didn't. Because you showed me what I was becoming, and it wasn't who my brother would have wanted me to be. Tyler died serving his country. I was disgracing his memory by attacking people who hadn't done anything to deserve it. You could have destroyed me in that mess hall. You could have ended my career on that parade deck. Instead, you gave me a chance to become someone else. I'm going to spend the rest of my career trying to deserve that chance. My first deployment is in 3 months. Before I go, I want to visit Quantico. I want to shake your hand properly. Not as the asshole who shoved you in a mess hall, as the Marine you helped me become. If that's okay with you. Staff Sergeant Derek Rollins. MARSOC. Marine read the letter twice. Then she folded it carefully, put it in her pocket. "Good news?" Hendricks asked. "The best kind." That evening, Marine sat in her office. The photographs on her desk caught the fading light. Warren Drake, her father, Operation Desert Phantom Team. 3 more photographs had joined them over the past 6 months. Her first graduating class, 23 faces, 23 new instructors carrying her lessons forward. David Thorne, Warren's son, standing beside her at Warren's memorial site. He'd visited twice now. They'd talked for hours, shared stories, grieved together, and now a new photograph, taken that morning. Her current class of 30 students gathered around her for the traditional end-of-training picture. 30 faces, 30 futures, 30 sets of lives that might be saved because someone taught them how to survive. A knock on her door. "Come in." Commander Slate entered. Her expression was different than usual. Softer. "Chief Cole, you have visitors." "Visitors." Slate stepped aside. 3 people walked into her office. David Thorne, Warren's son, carrying something wrapped in cloth. A woman Marine didn't recognize. Older, dignified, something familiar in her eyes. And Derek Rollins, in his MARSOC uniform, Marine Raider insignia on his chest. Marine stood slowly. "What is this?" David stepped forward. "Chief Cole, this is my mother, Elena Drake, Warren's wife." Elena Drake. The woman Warren had talked about in every quiet moment. The woman whose photograph he'd carried through every deployment. "Mrs. Drake." Marine's voice was barely a whisper. "I'm so sorry. I should have—" "Stop." Elena's voice was firm, warm. "Warren wrote about you in every letter, every call. He said you were the daughter he wished he'd had. He said you had his gift for patience and his curse of caring too much." Marine couldn't speak. Her throat had closed completely. "I came to give you something." Elena nodded at David. David unwrapped the cloth he was carrying. Inside was a rifle scope, old, worn, scratched from decades of use. "Warren's first scope," David said. "From his first deployment as a sniper. He kept it his whole career. Said it reminded him of who he was before he became good, before he became a legend." He held it out to Marine. "He would have wanted you to have it, to pass it forward, like everything else." Marine took the scope. Her hands were shaking. "I can't. This is too—" "He loved you." Elena's voice cracked slightly. "Not romantically, deeper than that. He loved you the way warriors love the people they trust with their lives. He told me once that if anything happened to him, I should find you. Make sure you were okay." Tears were streaming down Marine's face now. She didn't try to stop them. "He saved my life so many times. And you saved his. That's how it works. That's what he believed in." Rollins stepped forward, cleared his throat. "Chief Cole, I know I don't belong in this moment, but I wanted to be here. I wanted you to see what you helped create." He extended his hand. Marine took it. Firm grip, the handshake of equals. "Staff Sergeant Rollins, congratulations on your selection." "Thank you, Chief, for everything." "Don't thank me. Just be what your brother would have been proud of." "I will. I promise." He released her hand, stepped back. The 4 of them stood there in Marine's small office. 3 generations of warriors. 3 families touched by loss. 3 stories woven together by sacrifice and survival, and the choice to pass forward what had been learned. Elena Drake reached out, touched Marine's face gently. "Warren's last letter mentioned you, written the day before he died. He said you'd made a promise in Helmand, to become something other than a weapon. I did. He said he hoped you'd keep it, but he also said he knew you'd find a way to use what you'd learned, to protect instead of destroy, to teach instead of fight." Marine closed her eyes. "I tried. You did more than try. You succeeded. Look around you." Elena gestured at the photographs on the desk, at the letters stacked in boxes, at the life Marine had built from the ashes of what she'd been. "This is Warren's legacy, your father's legacy, your legacy, all woven together, all flowing forward." Marine opened her eyes. She looked at David, at Elena, at Rollins, at the photographs of students who were now teachers, at the letters from combat zones where her training had saved lives, at Warren's scope in her hands, the first piece of equipment he'd ever used as a sniper, now passed to her, to be passed forward again. "The ghost is gone," she said quietly. Elena nodded. "The guardian remains. And that's enough. That's everything." Outside evening formation called Marines to attention. Voices carried across Quantico's grounds. Commands given. Commands followed. The machinery of military life continuing its eternal rhythm. Inside, Marine Growled stood surrounded by the legacy of everyone she'd loved and lost. Warren Drake, Jonas Cole, Tyler Rollins, every operator who'd never made it home. They lived in her teaching, in her students, in the cascade of knowledge flowing forward like water finding its level. She placed Warren's scope on her desk, next to his photograph, next to her father's photograph, next to the faces of everyone she'd trained and everyone they would train. David took a photograph, the four of them together, present and past, loss and hope, ending and beginning. "Thank you," Marine said. "All of you." "Thank yourself," Elena replied. "Warren always said the hardest thing wasn't learning to fight. It was learning when not to. You taught Derek that. You teach all of them that." She hugged Marine, fierce and brief. "My husband chose well when he chose you." Then they left, David and Elena and Rollins, back to their lives, their futures, their own lines to hold. Marine stood alone in her office. But she wasn't alone. Not really. Warren was there in the scope. Her father was there in the photographs. Every student she'd trained was there in the letters stacked around her. She picked up her pen, started writing lesson plans for tomorrow's class. New students arriving next week, 35 this time. More requests than she could fill, her methods being adopted across the Corps. The weapon had learned to teach. The shadow had learned to illuminate. The ghost had learned to guard. And in that transformation, Marine Growled discovered something she'd spent 54 years searching for. Not peace, purpose, real purpose. The kind that survived loss and grief and time. The kind that meant something beyond individual survival. The kind that echoed forward into futures she'd never see, but would shape through every Marine she taught. Her father's voice in memory. Surviving isn't enough. Pass it forward. Warren's voice in memory. Find your line in the shadows and hold it. Her own voice finally at peace. The line is teaching. The line is protecting. The line is transforming what I was into what they need. She finished the lesson plans, set them aside, looked at the photographs one more time. "I kept the promise," she whispered. "I became something other than a weapon." The photographs didn't answer, but Warren smiled in his frame. Her father stood proud in his, and somewhere in the space between memory and presence, they approved. The ghost was gone. The guardian remained, and Marine Growled, 54 years old, with silver hair and scarred hands, and a lifetime of violence transformed into protection, had finally found her place, not knowing it, earning it, every single day.